Professor Murli Manohar in the chair, Anand Bhai, who has probably just stepped out for a moment. Dr. Challabhai Reddy Garu, who is the head as well as the moving spirit behind the Institute of Human Studies, and all my respected friends. Coming here has been a little bit of a choice for me to make because I was supposed to be elsewhere. But as I was saying to Chaladi in the morning, I'm very happy that I made the choice to come here today rather than being elsewhere. I want to congratulate her and her whole team, Ayushji, Sandat Kendra, everybody for organizing this really inspiring event. And as I said, I'm really happy to be here for a variety of reasons. I have a special connection with Bhagyanagar. I began my career here after returning from the US with my PhD. I started teaching at the University of Hyderabad, Central University, many years ago. And I had the privilege as a young lecturer to come in contact with Professor V. Madhusudan Reddy, who was very affectionate to me, and I don't know why. I don't know what he saw in me. And he didn't even know that I had 2 chapters in my PhD on Sri Aurobindo. That came out later, but he took me to his home, to the Institute of Human Study, and I came in contact with Anand Bhai, with Challa, and with this wonderful Reddy family who have done so much for the nation. You may not know this, they donated 1,000 acres of land in the Bhutan movement as well, long ago. And Anand Bhai and Challaji and everyone, they've given their whole life to live the philosophy and vision of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So it's a great privilege to be here. And I also recall that on the 125th anniversary of Sri Aurobindo, I happened to be at the Institute of Human Study. It was a wonderful program, and I spoke on Swami Vivekananda then, 25 years ago. So I'm happy to be here on the 150th anniversary of Sri Aurobindo, which we also, as everybody knows, celebrate as India's 75th anniversary. And I think this is a unique conjuncture. India at 75, Sri Aurobindo at 150. Never before, never after. And my presentation is called Bhavani Bharati, Sri Aurobindo and the Zeitgeist of the Nation. In fact, if you ask me honestly, I don't feel like speaking, because after Anand Bhai's talk, I just want to be quiet and really absorb, all the things he said, which were really moving. They touched us all very deeply. And reflecting on these last 25 years, I must say that I agree with him completely. I feel blessed. Most of us feel blessed to have come in contact with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. It happened in a variety of ways. He inherited it maybe. For me, it was purely accidental, though I realized later it was not entirely accidental. Nothing is entirely accidental, because the person who taught Sri Aurobindo pranayam in Baroda, I later found out was related to my family. His name was Mr. Devdhar, and then I also visited the room in the Majumdar Vada. Vada is that, not a street, it's actually a compound. Where the feudal chiefs each had their compound. It's a Marathi word. Where Yogi Lele asked him to practice his yoga, and you can see it in Sri Aurobindo's life, that when the thoughts I was just anyhow, good, you were outside when I was praising you, it's very good. So as I was saying, these connections with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother are not accidental at all. And so my father took me to that room before I went to the US, and I met Mai Sahab Azumdar, and she remembered Sri Aurobindo. She was a very old lady then. And then later I happened to write 2 chapters on Sri Aurobindo in my PhD. But the thing I wanted to say is, reflecting back on these 25 years, I completely agree with Anand Bhai that it's a great blessing. We are blessed to be, in touch or having come in contact with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Because this is another wonderful opportunity for us, to practice in our own ways this great sadhana where we try to uplift ourselves, That is what I wanted to say, that we think we are serving the masters or something, fine. But actually it's a chance for us to, spiritually grow, evolve, and maybe fulfill our own threshold. We all have a threshold, maybe even exceed it. We're born with a certain threshold. I think a human life well lived is when you can reach that spiritual threshold, the potential with which you're born, but perhaps exceed it. And it's a great blessing, I agree, to be in touch, to have come in contact with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and then this wonderful occasion of India at 75, Sri Aurobindo at 150, to bring us all together. And as I said, reflecting back, I noticed that the people who are, dedicated to Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, how much they have grown, how much they have evolved, and how much they have become a channel of this higher knowledge. Like Anand Bhai himself. The other day I was listening to, Dr. Alok Pandey, and that was also amazing in Bangalore. So it works. I mean, we see the change that Sri Aurobindo and the Mother are slowly bringing in our own lives. I can't speak for myself because I think that, honestly, I'm very, very still trapped in the mind, very much. And that, people in education, it's our dharma, it's our job, but it's not enough because something more is needed, that psychic awakening. And so I want to say that we must start by asking how to approach Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and I think the answer is in an integral way. By that I mean we need the devotion, Shraddhavan Labhate Jnanam, because without that devotion there's no receptivity. He was saying receptivity is very important. You can't receive, it's there, but you are blocked. So you need that receptivity, for which that Shraddha, that sense of devotion is very important. And they help us, they give us the experiences which renew our faith. Before I came here, I had to make this choice, and Shala said, "Don't worry, why are you anxious? Leave it to the Mother." And I said, yeah, why didn't I do that before? Why didn't I, why are we taking it all on ourselves? And I remember Alok Bhai saying this in Bangalore, and it really struck me as really important that, we've always understood Brahman as Sat, Chit and Ananda. And you try to follow Sat, it is so hard, it's really the razor's edge. And then he says, look at, Mother's Gayatri, Om Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Satyamayi Paramayi. So on this path, it's only Ananda. Anand Bhai is sitting right next to me. It's only Ananda. I mean, there's not that much struggle, I mean, you can go enjoy. The surrender can be joyous. So these were my sort of preliminary reflections of how the path transforms you as you walk on it. And this wonderful conjuncture, India at 75, Sri Aurobindo at 150, is a blessing for all of us to come together again. And I want to read a little excerpt. I'm always struck by this wonderful, very powerful letter that Sri Aurobindo wrote in Bangla to Barin after he was released in the general amnesty from the jail in Andamans. Beluji also quotes from it, so we have a fellowship there. And Anand Bhai talked about the crisis in India, as Sri Aurobindo defines it, which is this thought phobia, lack of thinking, incapacity of thought. And as I said, so we need this integral approach. The devotion is there, That's very important, but thought is so important, to develop that mental capacity, okay, to grapple with our problems. And devotion of another kind comes very easily to Indians. You just pedestalize somebody, you hero worship them, sabke gungan gao, and that becomes a substitute for thinking. That's a category error, right? So, and then the works. Without the works, it's only tamas. You just sit and spin the same yarns, the same stories. But every morning you have to get up and do your job, do your duty. So that is the integral approach, I feel, which I found very useful. So to come back to that letter, and I'll skip over the idea of that incapacity, for thought, which plagues all our universities, I must say. He tells Parent, what I'm aiming at is not a society like the present, rooted in division. What I have in view is a sangha, a community founded in the spirit and in the image of its oneness. It is with this idea that the name Deva Sangha has been given. The commune of those who want the divine life is the Deva Sangha. Such a Sangha will have to be established in one place at first, then spread all over the country. But if any shadow of egoism falls over this endeavor, then the Sangha will change into a sect. The idea may very naturally creep in that such and such a body is the one true Sangha of the future, the one and only center, that all else must be its circumference, and that those outside its limits are not of the fold, or even if they are, they have gone astray because they think differently. You may say, what need is there for a Sangha? Let me be free and live in every vessel. Let all become one without form, and let whatever must happen in the midst of that vast formlessness. There is a truth there, but only one side of the truth. Our business is not with the formless spirit alone. We have also to direct the movement of life. And there can be no effective movement of life without form. It is the formless that has taken form, and the assumption of name and form is not a caprice of Maya. Form is there because it is indispensable. We do not want to rule out any activity of the world as beyond our province. Politics, industry, society, poetry, literature, art will all remain, but we must give them a new soul and a new form. So this is kind of repeating what was said earlier in the morning, but I wanted to say this because about 5 years after Sri Aurobindo wrote these lines, the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh was founded. Look at the word Sangh that was used. And of course, I don't know if you know, when Dr. G started this organization, he had no name. Did you know that? He asked many people, tell me this name, that name, and finally they settled on this name. So, Kali Yuge Sanghe Shakti. That is what Sri Aurobindo is saying here. And at the same time, when you read these lines, you also know, when you become narrow, when you become sectarian, when you become exclusionary, then that is not the true Sangha. Buddha also talked about Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. And how important the Sangha is today in the work of spiritualizing politics. So I invite everybody to read this letter of Sri Aurobindo. It's like a manifesto for the new India. In fact, those of us who are interested in politics or public life should read this letter, because it gives you a blueprint, and it takes you from a very sectarian kind of party politics into something vast, immense. So, I want to explain the title of my talk, Bhavani Bharati Sri Aurobindo and the Zeitgeist of the Nation. I'll explain what zeitgeist means in a bit. But what I wanted to say, if I have to summarize it, I always like to give a summary, because otherwise, people are also very exhausted. There's what I call listening fatigue. You can't keep listening, right? So you want something which sums up everything. So And I'm going to take a inadvertent slip of the tongue of Anand Bhai by saying it's the difference between national ego and national yoga or national yajna. We should go towards the national yoga or the national yajna, not the national ego. That is the sum of my thought, because if you read Sri Aurobindo, the national ego is, should I say, the wrong path to take. Okay, if you want India to be great and Sanatana Dharma to be great, it has to be the national yoga. Okay, so that's the summing up of the talk. But let me just unpack it a little bit, and I don't think there's time for Q&A. So what I'll do is I've written out a short 2 or 3 page thing. I'll just read it, and then maybe we can break for lunch. But why do I use this German word Zeitgeist? Because it was made popular by Hegel, okay, who was a very important German philosopher, and it really means, the spirit of the age. And this word Geist is like the English word ghost, but it really means like the spirit, And there used to be the idea of the Folkgeist, okay, or the Weltgeist. So the Folkgeist is the spirit of the nation. The Weltgeist is the world spirit. But this word Zeitgeist now is a common word in the English language, was popularized by Hegel, though it was used by Herder and Goethe before him. And it means the spirit of the age, the world spirit of the epoch. And perhaps we are moving towards that epoch, okay? And if you read Sri Aurobindo's 5 dreams, or if you read The Ideal of Human Unity, then in these 5 dreams, liberation of India, the rising up of Asia, and the 3rd is this new world union of some kind. 4th is India's gift to the world, and the 5th is the spiritualizing of humanity and the raising of consciousness to a higher level. So all these 3 dreams of Sri Aurobindo, the last 3 of the 5 dreams, are all linked up with this idea of the Zeitgeist. But again, there are many people from Pragya Bharati here. So I think the Zeitgeist is very similar to what Dindayal Upadhyaya ji meant by Chiti. It is, so the nation is not the state. The state is the configuration of power, the administration, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. The 3 arms of the, government make up the state. But that's not the nation. Okay? The nation is really spirit. That's what I've been trying to, that's the main point I've been trying to make, that Sri Aurobindo is interested not just in the spirit of the nation, which is Sanatana Dharma, as we have heard, but the nation of spirit. Okay? And here's the paradox, friends, because the spirit of the nation seems to take you to, an idea of the nation which is kind of exceptional, oh, we are great, or we are the Bharatiyas, this particular country, this geographical entity. And it seems to be taking you in the direction of India as a great nation, which is very important, very necessary, because from that point of view, we are still not a nation. We are a nation in the making. We are still divided, in communities, castes, creeds, regions, languages. And that's why identity politics is the most important kind of politics that you see anywhere. And the division of India, the tragic division with millions of lives lost, perhaps, if not millions, at least hundreds of thousands, and displacement at a level never seen in human history. 12 million people displaced, never before. So it's a terrible, so we have to remember that also when we remember, as we know, on the 14th we commemorate that, the day of partition horrors. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you think that we are a nation, I would say we're still a nation in the process of becoming a nation because we're still divided, isn't it? In many different ways. But if you think about it from another point of view, not the spirit of the nation, where we are still, as I said, groping and growing towards the spirit of the nation. If you turn it around and if you think about the nation of spirit, which is what Sri Aurobindo wanted, not just the spirit of the nation, but the nation of spirit, then there's no national boundaries, because in spirit we are all one. That is the ideal of human unity, where humanity as a whole functions, in a manner that we've not conceived of before, because the nation-state system is very new, as we all know, the Westphalian system, and it's still highly competitive. Every border has a skirmish, whether it is China and Taiwan, or China and India, everywhere, every border is fraught, or India and Pakistan, right? And internally, there are borders within nations, right? In Sri Lanka, one bit of the nation was already cut off, as you know, for a long time. Before it was reintegrated, there was a civil war. So obviously, this competitive system of nation states can't be the human destiny, because it's going to be constantly at war, and competitive means you want to dominate somebody, right? So this is the paradox, that the nation or spirit is actually international. It's more than international, okay? It is the harmonizing of the entire human species, and maybe even further, because we have to think about the other people who also inhabit our planet. It's not that human beings have the sole right over the planet and we can eat everybody else up, and grow and reproduce so that the earth and its resources are destroyed. No. So obviously, if you go from the spirit of the nation to the nation of spirit, the only bridge is a consciousness revolution. So human evolution and consciousness revolution. I think this is what is incumbent upon us at this stage, of our not just national life, but international life. And the reason, it's very interesting when you go into these words deeply, because the word nation comes from nasi, which is the same root. That's a Latin word, but it's the same root as jati, and gya, and like we heard this morning that the Honorable Governor was a gynecologist, So gyne and the nation and jati and jana, these have the same root. It means the womb, So the spirit, of the nation, okay, and the nation of spirit. So what is the nation of spirit? The nation of spirit is the Manav Jati. Okay, there's no difference. We are all, so that's what I'm saying. So there's the Bharatiyas, the spirit of the nation, which we're still trying to be. But if you turn it around and if you say the nation of spirit, the nation of spirit means Manav Jati. Okay? It's for for the whole of humanity. And that message, and the way to go there, the formula to achieve it, we have to give. But we can't give it now because we are still inadequate. We have to prepare ourselves. And as I said yesterday, if you just say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, that's not enough if you're a university professor. Okay? You have to do so much work. You have to read and write and think and analyze. It's not enough to have a slogan. And if you change a slogan, Inqilab Zindabad to Bharat Mata Ki Jai, you have not created the consciousness revolution. Okay, so let's accept that when we move forward. So now, as I said, let me very quickly go to the write-up that I had here, and then perhaps we can end. Because when you went out, Anand Bhai, I said that it's very hard to speak after your talk. Actually, I want to just go to my room and be quiet to actually absorb, the things you said. So I'm glad I have a little write-up, So this is the title you have before you already, which is Bhavani Bharati, Sri Aurobindo and the Zeitgeist of the Nation. Okay? The unique conjuncture of Sri Aurobindo's 150th birth anniversary and the 75th anniversary of India's independence affords us an exceptional opportunity to examine where we are headed as a nation. On 24th January 1908, almost 2 years before Gandhiji wrote his seminal treatise Hind Swaraj on his way back from England to South Africa aboard the SS Kildonan Castle, Sri Aurobindo made a speech at Nashik, Maharashtra. Incidentally, Gandhiji also says he wanted to spiritualize politics. That's why he entered politics. And we know the limitations of Gandhiji in this process, right? As we come closer to the partition, we realize that the ultimacy of non-violence, okay, ahimsa paramo dharma, is valid. Ultimacy, but not immediacy. In other words, when Sri Aurobindo was asked what to do, he said, give them back as good as you get, even more. Because otherwise, if you're fighting with your hands tied at the back, the other person is not going to always be transformed. Anyhow, so this idea of spiritualizing politics was very much on people's minds. That's how the idea of Swaraj, which is a Vedic idea, if you go to Rig Veda, the first mandala and the 80th sukta, it is a Swarajyam sukta. Every line ends with Swarajyam, every couplet. But it describes the qualities of Indra, right? But the idea of Swarajya is in the Upanishads. It's in the Chandogya Upanishad, it's in the Kathopanishad, it's in the Taittiriya Upanishad, and it is also in the Kaushitaki Upanishad. Okay? So the idea is there, it has different meanings, but ultimately it means self-mastery. So who is Swarat? Swarat is someone who has mastery over his or her indriyas, the organs of senses and action, and all the organs that are a part of your body. And only such a master of himself or herself can then be the ideal or just ruler. We heard about Janaka, Ajatashatru, the tradition of these rishi rulers in India, who, the Raja rishis we call them, and they were very important. So only the Swarat can be the Virat. So that is the Upanishadic idea. So if you want to serve the nation, wonderful, but first transform yourself. Or let it go hand in hand. There's no first and second. So that is the message that you derive from the Upanishads. And again, in the late 19th century, how did it again arise in India's consciousness? This is something very interesting. And there's a link. There's a link through the Hindavi Swaraj of the Vijayanagar Empire, Shivaji's letter. I think it's not authentic, but from what we gather, the letter he wrote that he wanted to establish Hindavi Swaraj. But the idea of Swaraj cannot die in India, because we cannot be a subject people. And we don't want to oppress others either. So this is the third way. We don't want to dominate, we don't want to colonize, but we don't want to be colonized either. But in the present world system, you see, this third way is very difficult to effectuate. And we also made some blunders. We went off to Sri Lanka as a so-called peacekeeping force. So the tendency to go somewhere, so, anyhow, we can't get into politics very much. But Swarajya is a spiritual concept in India. We brought it into politics. Even Swatantra, in Kashmir Shaiva Siddhanta, Trika Shaiva, Swatantra is the quality of Shiva, Swatantra. So we brought this into politics because we wanted to spiritualize politics. Everyone wanted to do that, okay? But it is only Sri Aurobindo, you're right, who gives us the complete description and blueprint. In other places, other people, you have fragments. That is the difference. In Sri Aurobindo, you have a fully developed, integral vision. And the more you read, you begin to see the whole world picture becoming clearer and clearer. And as I said again, this is a great opportunity for us to do this deeply, study this deeply, and it will transform us, I believe. Okay? So Sri Aurobindo, as I said, celebrates and elaborates on the meaning of Swaraj in this speech. And I bring this up because people haven't read this speech. It was in Marathi, it was then translated in an intelligence report, but it is in the CW essay. And it's good to look at some of this material that we're not familiar with. Uttarpada speech, everybody has read. The Three Madnesses, everyone has read. Five Dreams, everyone has read. But today we heard from Anand Bhai this letter also to, I think it was to, he quoted from this amazing letter to, I think it was a fragment of the letter that he quoted that was written to
Motilal Roy.
Who?
Motilal Roy, I believe.
Spirituality is India's only politics. So this was to Parthasarthi Iyengar, 1911, 13 July 1911. It's in the incarnate word. In fact, Venkatji and he were sitting together and looking for it. But I'm saying that if you tell us the sources, Anand Bhai, that would help some of us who want to study deeper. But it's very important, that's what I'm trying to say, that you also look at some of these other speeches and writings, like the letter to Paranda, which is also not as well known as it should be, and this Nashik speech, okay, which I'm going to quote from, and it's in an intelligence report, because the British intelligence was tailing him. And if you think about, anyhow, so let me just quote from this. Sri Aurobindo elaborates on the meaning of Swaraj in the speech. If we do not acquaint ourselves with the object in view, that is Swaraj, I'm afraid we, 30 crores of people, will become extinct. Swaraj is life, it is nectar and salvation. Nectar, Amrit. I'm sure the word in Marathi was Amrit. I don't know if whoever coined it was aware, I don't know. But for me, it's not an accident. He says, Swaraj is life, it is nectar and salvation. Swaraj in a nation is the breath of life. Without breath of life, a man is dead. So also without Swaraj, a nation is dead. Swaraj being the life of a nation, it is essential for it. So this clear statement, even there's an essay of his, Doctrine of Passive Resistance. He writes that after Dadabhai Navroji, in the concluding speech in the Calcutta Congress, talks about Swaraj for the first time. Okay? And Sri Aurobindo then analyzes this speech, and then he says, no, we want full independence, just as UK has independence. We want independence. Not like the colonies, not dominion status. That's not good enough for us. And it takes Congress 29 years. On the 19th of December 1929 Lahore session, they adopt the Purna Swaraj resolution. But Sri Aurobindo wrote that in 1907. But even before, when he was a Cambridge undergraduate, 1893, okay, just before he came back to India, 1893, 21 years of age, he was already in the Lotus and Dagger Society. Aravind, Lotus. So I find, as a student of literature, all these things are very fascinating to me. Of course, the Lotus and Dagger Society never met a second time. It only had one meeting. But Sri Aurobindo was there. So the idea that India should be fully free was in his mind right from then. And, Anand Bhai read that letter. He was born with it. It was in his marrow. I might quote that passage later. Now let's skip to 1905. He was in the service of the Maharaja of Baroda, Sayajirao Gaikwad, and there was a séance with his brother Barindra serving as a medium, and he got an intriguing message from Sri Aurobindo, and what was the message? Mandir Gado, raise a temple. But what did it mean? Sri Aurobindo interpreted it as a commandment.
He gets a message from Ramakrishna Paramahamsa.
Yeah, that's what I said.
No, you said Sri Aurobindo.
No, I said in an intriguing message from Sri Ramakrishna in a séance in which his brother Barindra was the medium because his personality. So what is a séance? I mean, the planchette, I don't know if you tried all this, but you communicate with the spirits of the dead. Suppose you have a question. I mean, you don't have to go into all of that, but this is the message you got. Mandir Gado. What does it mean? Sri Aurobindo interpreted it as a commandment to propagate a new revolutionary creed based on the consecration of a temple to Mother India. But this would not be a physical temple so much as a nationwide invocation of Mother India's Bharat Shakti in a number of revolutionary cells spread across the country. To elaborate this plan, Sri Aurobindo wrote a small but extraordinary manifesto, Bhavani Mandir, which has been circulated. Chalaji has circulated. Look at your bag. I think it's there. So read it. A copy of this pamphlet we found, it comes to us because it was submitted as evidence in the Alipur bomb case in 1908, with the markings of the police all over it, the CID, and Barendra's name has been written under it, but we assume that it was actually written by Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo starts with the startling assertion, quote, "We in India fail in all things for want of Shakti." It's all in caps, it's like a section head. And he elaborates, "We have all things else, but we are empty of strength, void of energy." We mentioned earlier that we lack in that vitality. We have abandoned Shakti and are therefore abandoned by Shakti. Unquote. This is what Sri Aurobindo says. And the consequences of such weakness are disastrous. As the heading of another section says, our knowledge is a dead thing for want of Shakti. Why is our knowledge inadequate? Why can't our knowledge save us, according to Sri Aurobindo? Because, and I quote him, it lacks strength. It is a dead knowledge, a burden under which we are bowed, a poison which is corroding us rather than as it should be, a staff to support our feet and a weapon in our hands. Our knowledge then, weighed down with a heavy load of tamas, lies under the curse of impotence and inertia. This is Sri Aurobindo's writing. And today Anand Bhai read a passage where he says, Sanatana Dharma needs a new body because the old body has become decrepit. This is what is required. We need new creation. We cannot go back to the old structures. Okay? There's no going back, in fact. That is not how the time spirit works. We can derive inspiration and we can learn from the wisdom of the past. We have to learn because the way to the future lies through the past. But we can't rest back there in the past. Okay? And you look around, that's what people think. Somehow we have to revive the glory of ancient India. No, we have to have new creation. There's no revival. Okay, Renaissance doesn't mean revival in that sense. We have to absorb that spirit. We have to understand it. And that understanding, I'm afraid, we still lack. Because we have not understood our past. We can be proud of it, but we need to understand it. We need to engage with it in a certain way. And if you want to, you must read The Secret of the Veda. Because after Shankara, we thought the Vedas were karma kanda. And we have ignored the Vedas. Okay? And Dayanand Saraswati said back to the Vedas. But what did he mean by that? It's different from what Sri Aurobindo says. So, The Secret of the Veda is the book to read, I feel, for the times. Okay? Because it's the integral truth of the Vedas that we want to bring into the modern age and time, and only this can help us in the age of artificial intelligence and the digitization of everything and the dematerialization of our life. It's only that consciousness, it's that deep understanding of who we are after the awakening of that Atma, the Antaratma within us, and that Antaratma of the nation has to be awakened. And it can't be done simply through, this kind of, it needs a great engagement. And the 55 or 60 Sanskrit universities, we don't know what they're producing. How are they helping us, grasp that knowledge that the rishis and the others left for us? It's a question for us to think about deeply. And Sri Aurobindo says our knowledge is weighed down with a heavy load of tamas, lies under the curse of impotence and inertia. So if you want to be a Vishwaguru, it's not so easy, okay? You haven't even understood your own past. You haven't understood the West, because they dominated the world, but you don't want to engage. You say, oh, this is rubbish, that is rubbish, they're materialists. Fine, they're materialists, but you're using everything they made, isn't it? So we have to think about this deeply. That critical spirit has to be awakened, and that creative energy of the past, okay? Anyhow. So we have to learn that critical spirit from the West and the creative energy of our past to create something new for the future. If India has been a knowledge society for millennia, we have also not been lacking in bhakti or devotion. But, says Sri Aurobindo, bhakti cannot live and work for want of Shakti. Without strength, even devotion is useless. Quote, in the absence of Shakti, we cannot concentrate, we cannot direct, we cannot even preserve it, unquote. Sri Aurobindo believes that India must be reborn to manifest its strength and genius. I quote him, no man or nation need be weak unless he chooses. No man or nation need perish unless he deliberately chooses extinction. Luckily, we have not chosen extinction. I mean, that is one of the great things of the Indian freedom movement. Just think, the kind of people we produced when we were fighting a great enemy out there, the British colonial imperial power. After independence, we haven't produced those people. That level, of competence, genius, talent, creativity, in any sphere. Just think about it. You don't have to agree with me, I'm just asking you to contemplate some of these things. The cultivation and exaltation of strength as the crying want of Indians is Sri Aurobindo's motto in Bhavani Bharati, an idea that harkens back to Swami Vivekananda's injunction, and I quote, strength and manliness are virtue, weakness and cowardice are sin. Or, this is a great fact, strength is life, weakness is death. Strength is felicity, life eternal, immortal. Weakness is constant strain and misery. Weakness is death. Now, one good thing that has happened is that we are shedding that weakness now. I see a lot of strength in India now, okay? A lot of pride, a lot of strength, but more has to come. We need that cultivation of knowledge, the cultivation of excellence, and the awakening of that Antaratma. In his Bengali writings in Dharma, published in October 1909, Sri Aurobindo elaborated his idea of Swaraj, of full independence. Aryan rishis, he said, used to designate the practical and spiritual freedom and its fruit, the inviolable Ananda, as Swarajya or self-empire. Political freedom is but a limb of Swarajya, self-empire. As long as there is an alien government or ruler, no nation can be called a free nation possessing self-empire. So, the colonizer is gone, but who is colonizing us? It's ourselves, isn't it? The colonizer is inside our minds. So, this is a deeper purification that is required. Political independence is there, but we haven't attained Swarajya, have we? It's something to think about. For Sri Aurobindo, freedom is the law of the soul. Now, this for me is one of the most important things, because in India we think that once you have some message, then everybody has to carry it out. Somebody will give the slogan, then from top to bottom, you carry it out. But the mind has to be consulted in its own growth, right? We don't want to do that. We want to just ऊपर से डंडा लगाओ ये करो, So blind obedience is not the way of Swarajya. Okay, it has to be, the awakening of the inner faculties, and that's what I guess the Sri Aurobindonian schools are trying to do. That is what free progress means, and our system is completely different from that. Okay, so freedom is the law of the soul. Human beings strive to attain higher and higher levels of freedom. And whatever obedience is demanded has to be voluntary and not forced, not coerced. Coercion is a lower principle. Coercion is an asuric principle. It's not a daivic principle. Okay? So, for all people, subjection is a messenger and servitor of death. And yet, how does power operate? Power operates by exercising control. Okay, if they can't control you, they don't want you. You have to be an entity that can be controlled. That is how power operates, unfortunately, all over the world. So you have to resist that, because otherwise you will lose your own Swarajya. A nation would die out of weakness and sterility as long as the foreigner is occupying our country. And if any nation loses independence, it's by its own fault. Okay? So this is something we have to understand. Why did we lose our freedom? There was a reason for it, we have to go into it. While Sri Aurobindo was in the forefront of the national struggle for only a brief period of 5 years or so, from 1905 to 1910, his contribution was much larger. This sense of historic destiny, which he had, was evident, not only in his All India Radio speech, when he says, August 15th is the birthday of free India. To me personally, it must naturally be gratifying that this date, which was notable only for me because it was my own birthday, celebrated annually by those who have accepted my gospel of life, should have acquired this vast significance. And this self-confidence in shaping India's destiny is reflected much earlier in the three madnesses. We heard about that from Anandhai. I was born with it. It is in my very marrow. It is not physical strength. I'm not going to fight with sword and gun, but it is the strength of knowledge. He tells his wife Mrinalini. He's 33 years old then? And then, of course, I go to the title of my presentation, Bhavani Bharati, the only Sanskrit poem that he's written. It's also in that package with the translation, so please read it. And there's an unmistakable sense of a special mission to deliver the fallen race with the special knowledge that he has. God sent me to earth to accomplish this great mission. Then the Alipur jail, we've seen that at great length in the Uttarpada speech. The definition of Sanatana Dharma, not a narrow religion, a sectarian religion, an exclusive religion, can live only for a limited time and a limited purpose. This is the one religion that can triumph over materialism by including and anticipating the discoveries of science and the speculations of philosophy. So, what is the message here? He says that when the Sanatana Dharma declines, then the nation declines. That's why I asked earlier, how did we get colonized? And if the Sanatana Dharma were capable of perishing, then with it the nation will also perish. Okay? But it cannot perish, isn't it? So the Sanatana Dharma, that is nationalism, this may sum up Sri Aurobindo's credo of what we mean by spiritual nationalism, or the spirit of the nation. But better still, as I said at the beginning, the nation of spirit, different from ethnic or civic nationalism, or even cultural nationalism based on language, region, religion, or ways of life and cultural practices. Sri Aurobindo's nation of the spirit is about humankind's march to higher consciousness. In this manifest evolutionary destiny of the species, past and present forms of nationalism are fated to prove inadequate. Revisiting Sri Aurobindo's idea of Bhavani Mandir and Swaraj suggests to us that if we are a Sanatani nation with a secular constitution, our Sanatanism cannot be narrow and exclusionary, that it cannot be content with the remnants of the dead or encrusted knowledge of yesteryears. That will not make us great again. That will not finish the unfinished renaissance of India. And that patriotism and devotion cannot substitute the quest for truth and understanding and the creativity and collective yajna, the collective yoga required to pull us out, of our present condition. And only then can we become the Vishwaguru. So as Sri Aurobindo says, we do not belong to the past dawns but the noons of the future. So this is what the Pro-Vice-Chancellor was talking about, the future, the appeal of the future, the experiment of Aurobindo as a model for a new arrangement of nations in the world to coexist and celebrate and fully express their own individual cultural or national souls. Okay, it's still in an experimental form. But to conclude, as I was trying to say at the beginning, that if you move from the spirit of the nation, the zeitgeist of the nation, to the nation of spirit, then we'll have to move, towards some kind of a shift in global consciousness. And why don't we consider this a very auspicious sandhi, a conjuncture to participate in this, not just Rashtra Yajna, but Vishwa Yajna. Thank you so much.
So may I have your question, sir?
It's up to the chair.
I think I finished before my 1 hour. I don't mind. People are not very impatient.
Yeah. Very briefly, with respect to chronology, we mentioned BCE, ACE, before Christian era and after Christian era. Why we should not shift to BMB, AMB, before Mahabharat and after Mahabharat? And one more question, sir.
Can I answer that quickly?
Yeah, please.
Actually, it had nothing to do with my talk.
Yeah.
Out of respect for you, I'm answering.
I was about to say that, not directly connected, but with respect to Sanatana, it is indirectly connected.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying, out of respect for you, I'll try to answer it. We don't say BC AD anymore, and when you say BCE, it doesn't refer to Christian, it refers to common era. Now you can say, why should the common era be the Christian era, more or less? Because they rule the world. You create, why should it be Greenwich Mean Time? You make it Bhagyanagar Mean Time. I don't mind. But if everybody accepts it, we'll also accept it, okay? So you see, these are the points I'm trying to make, that your era, my era, and that's not the point. You have to agree to something, which is in common. And if the whole world thinks, wow, before Mahabharata, after Mahabharata, why not? But we can't date the Mahabharata itself. It's very difficult. There are hundreds of different theories. In fact, I don't want to open Pandora's box here, but events in India are very hard to date. You don't know the dates of Yajnavalkya, of Bharata, of Bhartrihari, of Panini, of Bhaskara. The dates are not available. This is the fact at the moment.
Thank you, sir. The second one is that we were celebrating Azadi Ka Amrutotsav. Azadi Ka Amrutotsav just completed or continuing. Why should we be in that bad dream that we were under the colony rule for some time? Thieves come to a house, take the wealth, and they don't stay here in the house, they go away. That's what happened to India, along with other countries also, and they left. Why should we be dream of the future? You just say ancient India and the modern India. India past and India now. India then and now. Why we go on celebrating year after year, just feeling that our forefathers were under the colonial rule of the British? I don't understand.
Sir, we are still colonized. We are still very colonized, unfortunately, and there's a lot of work to be done. And actually, if you think about infinite time and space, then colonialism has no meaning. But we are not there as yet. Our own idea of time and space, we don't have memories more than how many ancestors do we remember, etc. So, it's an excuse, to bring us together maybe, but until our consciousness doesn't recognize these boundaries, saying externally, let's do it, let's do that, then you're saying the same thing, You do it, and then if you can spread through your own life that sort of different way of doing things, that's wonderful. But I think I'm very happy with this, India at Sri Aurobindo at 150 and India at 75. And I'm very happy that the culture ministry is taking it up, because it gives us an excuse to have the satsang, And we should have more of these things, not less, because otherwise they're wasting our money in any case, that. All the money that you give to government, how much of it is really used, for the purposes for which it is collected? And everywhere, there is this cess and that cess and this and that, and yet, once in 5 years getting your vote is not enough. We heard earlier that parliamentary democracy is an imperfect system. So, what I'm trying to say is we are in an imperfect world with an imperfect system, and the way human arrangements are on this planet are imperfect. And it's only with the vision of the future perfection, if you measure it, then you'll see that all these experiments are slow steps towards something better that might come. So we cannot be content with what has been accomplished, but we have to dream of a time when, human life can be better organized, there can be a better consciousness, there can be no division between people, that the world, the universe belongs to everyone, and there's human flourishing. So these are what Sanatana Dharma's ideas are. And at the least, we have to start with ourselves, fundamentally. That's what I can say.
So as long as we are slaves of our mind, we are colonized.
One question. So you have been traveling across the country in this year also, speaking to different universities. In the morning also, Anandhaya's point was about the universities. What is happening in universities. So as academic NGOs like Samvit Kendra or Prajna Bharati or other institutions, what is it that you think that we can do to supplement or I won't say replace, but yeah, of course supplement what should be done in the university? Or anything that is happening that you would like to share with the audience?
See, the Pro-Vice Chancellor is here, and I've also been the administrative and academic head of the Indian Institute of Advanced Study. Our public institutions are in a state of crisis because there are so many vested interests and all kinds of politics, identity politics, caste, language, region, insider, outsider, and basically jobs, that people should get jobs, So these institutions are not primarily for the purpose for which they're established. What is a university for? It should unleash human potential. It should be a center of excellence. How many of our universities are like that? So we need tremendous will and capacity to change. At the most, we are saying, okay, let's not let it deteriorate further. Somehow we will, carry on. But to answer your question, I think organizations like yours can collaborate with these universities because you're not constrained by those parameters, because you're independent, you're not answerable. And therefore, you can be knowledge disseminators and like in JNU, for so many years I was there, and there was a particular ideology. They would ban you, they would boycott you, you were marginalized. All of these things would happen. But if there are other organizations, other groups, you can create spaces, And eventually we'll have to reform these universities because they are public universities. They are made with your money and my money and the taxpayers' money. And they can't be allowed to be ruined or just become political platforms for Andolan GVs, because you ask somebody, what is the competence you've got? Ideology is not a competence. It's just an affiliation. You need the competence in a subject, whatever your subject is. And in JNU, if you read my book, the whole university was hijacked to mount a campaign against an elected government. And I said, you can't do that, because you have to allow the students to study and the labs to be opened, and people should have the freedom, to whatever you want to take a mocha, you do it, but don't, shut down a university. The primary purpose of a university is not to mount a political agitation. It's to read, write, think, study, go to labs, do research, write papers. So you're subverting the purpose of a university. And what's happening on the other side? Privatization, which is not fully regulated, and some of it is purely commercial, and some of it is actually rackets. They're selling degrees without any compunction. You can look around and see what's going on. So people who are sincere, should work to cleanse the system, to reform it, And I, for one, am against political interference in universities, whether it's left or right or center. You appoint somebody, let them do the job. Don't interfere all the time, which we do unfortunately, And I've been abroad, they don't do that. Even public universities, they don't, it's not that some politician will come and camp there and interfere and tell the president of the university what to do, whom to hire. But we cannot, it seems to me in India, our great problem is we cannot separate anything from politics. But India's only politics, according to Sri Aurobindo's spirituality. If we believe that, that will be fantastic. But you know what they'll do? They'll politicize spirituality also. They'll say, your spirituality, my spirituality. That's what we do. But as I said, no pessimism now, okay? No time for pessimism. Whether it's India, 75 Sri Aurobindo, no time for pessimism. And I follow a very simple principle, lead, follow, or get out of the way. If I can lead, wonderful. I can follow, wonderful. Otherwise, I get out of the way. I don't want to obstruct anybody, And there's so much pessimism and negationism. Like suppose you're doing something good, Ayushi, 10 people will criticize you. Why is he doing it? Who's asked him to do that? And they obstruct you. This has to change in India, and I should have the capacity to say, oh, they're doing something good, let me appreciate it. This we need to appreciate, even across the political divide. But today, look at how it is on TV. It's a completely polarized and divided society, which is not good. It's not good for free societies to be so polarized, And along all these lines, we have to strive for harmony, and that can only come with that consciousness, that compassion, that you're also part of me, It's not that you're somebody else from some other place. You're a part of me, I'm a part of you. So, when in JNU, people used to say first, oh, you're talking to so-and-so. I say, I talk to everybody. I don't practice untouchability. I believe in the Constitution of India. I talk to everyone, So that we need that spirit of dialogue and mutuality. And you have to rise above your own interests for something higher. So Sri Aurobindo, in fact, the mother, let's end with that. The mother says that whatever you offer to the divine becomes eternal. Okay, and whatever you offer to the world perishes. So let's end on that.
Now it is time to pray. Thank you.
A few words, sir.
No, I have no words to say. Now it is time to realize the national soul. So after listening to Paranjape, Makarand is being tasted of Paranjape.
Tasted, I hope, not wasted. Thank you so much.
Please accept it. Very grateful that it could come.
Thank you. I'm sure
sure these are the words of sure.
Yes, yes.